Good afternoon. It's a pleasure to share the panel with a very distinguished individual from NATO headquarters, Dr. Niehus, who represents the NATO Public Diplomacy Division. And I'm Mikheil Darchiashvili, Deputy Defense Minister of Georgia. I'm really delighted to be here in Riga at the conference, which is happening just 1 week after a very historic summit of the NATO heads of state and the government. And it will be fair to first start with analyzing what were the main deliverables of the summit. We as a partner nation, we value the outcomes of the summit when it comes to the transatlantic bond strengthening, when it comes to the strengthening of the NATO capabilities, and of course the open door policy, which we will speak after we finalize these topics. And Dr. Niehus, I would be glad to hear your opinion about the summit deliverables.
Well, I think thank you, Michael, and also from my side, it's a pleasure to be here in Riga at a really stunning location. I've been several times in Riga before, but never in this spectacular building. So really enjoying being here with you. Now, for the summit, I think this probably the single most important result achievement allies and NATO have had is the agreement on the Readiness Action Plan in response to the clearly very much changed security environment in Europe following the Russian illegal annexation of the Crimean Peninsula and the Russian provocations in Ukraine. So the Readiness Action Plan, which has a dual approach, reassurance to allies, but also realignment, readaptation of our military posture, I think is the single most important result. It goes hand in hand, clearly also with allies agreeing to sort of change the tide when it comes to defense spending. A number of elements which are in the Readiness Action Plan, such as the so-called spearhead force, will be resource intensive. So allies agreed to work towards the famous 2% GDP margin for defense spending in their budgets in the decades to come, and in any case to also hold the decline of defense budgets. So I think this pledge on defense spending is the second key result of the summit, and again combined with that probably also the renewal of the transatlantic bond, the transatlantic link. There are many others, but I think those are the three things which I would single out.
Absolutely. I think we are on the same page, and allies and the NATO faces the real challenges, whether it's drawdown of the contingent from Afghanistan or the activation and the gross violation of the human rights and the barbarian actions of the ICIC in Syria and in Iraq, and of course the first and foremost the Russia's invasion and occupation of Ukraine and the annexation of the Crimea. And I would like to use this moment to say a few words about it. The government of Georgia fully supports Ukraine's territorial integrity and sovereignty, and of course we deplore strongest way the Russian actions against the sovereign nation of Ukraine. If we look back a little bit, the Ukraine, what's happening in Ukraine, it's already happened in Georgia in 2008. Russians invaded us, occupied us, and now it's happening in the Ukraine, and we should expect the continuation unless the Kremlin's very provocative and aggressive policy to redraw the borders of Europe remains unchecked. And we as a partners who have this vulnerability from our neighbor, we were really happy to see transatlantic bond, to see the united stance from the allies when it comes to the Ukraine and the Russian aggression on the Ukraine. One of the elements which I would also add to the summit deliverables was the partnerships. Initiation of the interoperability platform, which will further boost the NATO and partners cooperation, and also the enhanced opportunity partners groups, where Georgia was invited together with Sweden, Finland, Australia and Jordan. Of course, we are privileged to be there. We are really privileged to be recognized as one of the NATO's most interoperable and capable partners, and we look forward to getting all the benefits of this distinguished groups.
Yeah, yeah, you're right. I think Georgia has confirmed its very pertinent and very important role as a prominent partner of NATO, and that has been recognized at the summit. Yes. Because I mean, we agreed, allies agreed to launch the so-called enhanced package with Georgia. So as a means to further prepare and work with Georgia for a future potential NATO membership. So in many ways that will help to pave the way for Georgia to at one point become a member of the alliance. But if I may say on a broader path, there's sometimes discussion on. It's a pity that the summit was not about enlargement. Yeah. Enlargement is on hold. I would take the stance to say, well, the open door policy is not on hold. Yes. It is systematically enshrined in the North Atlantic Treaty. So it is always there. It's always an open door, which can serve as a stimulus for potential partners. Georgia being one of them, but there are at least 3 others who aspire NATO membership in the foreseeable future.
In terms of the NATO membership aspiration of Georgia, which is fully supported by the Georgia's population, the support exceeds 80% of our population. It's we were aware that it's not an enlargement summit. When we were coming to the NATO headquarters, to the Wales for the summit, we had a clear vision that this is first not a enlargement summit, but we wanted to get as much as possible to continue our movement towards NATO. And I think the deliverables which came out concerning the NATO's open door policy and Georgia's NATO membership was pretty solid. First, I absolutely agree with you that our perception is that the NATO enlargement and the NATO's open door policy is not stalled, because once again NATO allies reconfirmed that the open door remains open for European democracies who are able to provide and contribute to the security of the Euro-Atlantic area according to the provisions of the Washington Treaty. And then the decisions have been taken by the allies also how to move forward and how to take forward this open door policy. And when it comes to Georgia, we are really pleased and encouraged to get first the reconfirmation that Georgia will become a NATO member. We are pleased that the NATO allies very adequately validated the progress what Georgia has achieved when it comes to democratic development, when it comes to Georgia's contribution to the global peace and security. And we got the package, substantial package, which, as you rightfully mentioned, will help us and will pave the way to us to eventually become a NATO members. And the package involves very important elements, which will help us to enhance further our interoperability with NATO, to enhance our defense capabilities and eventually get the NATO membership.
Yeah. So, so a lot to do for Georgia. Clearly also still a lot to do for Montenegro. I mean, Montenegro, you know, also got some sort of intensified and focused talks, which again are supposed to support its path towards NATO membership. And allies agreed that by 2015 they would review the situation and take a decision then about Montenegro eventually joining the alliance. And in the meantime, discussion will, or intensified talks will focus on the 3 main points. I mean, security sector reform, rule of law, and also public support in Montenegro, which could be higher than it is currently. So also there, I think we have made some progress towards furthering an integration process, which is desired. For the other 2, the Bosnia-Herzegovina and the former Yugoslav Republic of Macedonia, as you know, I mean, there are specific issues these countries need to solve before progress can be made.
No, that's really important, and we can definitely conclude that there was a serious movement towards keeping the door open, and the decisions which were taken at the Wales summit will definitely take forward this NATO's open door policy. And there are very often the discussions whether Georgia needs map or not. Before going to the summit, there were some discussions, internal ones, as well as some expert communities were deliberating whether we need map or not. But after the Wales summit, so we got additional instruments which will be totally sufficient to drive country towards NATO. Because frankly speaking, we always like to decode like membership action plan. It has political value that country at some point will become a NATO member, and it has practical value in terms of the annual national programs. Georgia has both. Georgia got the pledge in Bucharest summit that we will become NATO member. At the same time, we got annual national plan, and on top of that we have NATO-Georgia Commission, which works effectively, and at the Wales we got enhanced package, substantial package, plus we become a part of the enhanced opportunity partners, which all together represent a very strong mechanisms towards membership.
Yeah, and on top you're also in the defense and related security capacity building initiative.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So which is a small group for the time being. You from Georgia, Jordan and on Moldova for the time being. So you are already in a very intense cooperation mode with the alliance. Not the least also because Georgia is a very prominent contributor to all NATO operations.
Absolutely.
So that's clearly also something which does not go unnoticed in NATO and is highly valued by the allies.
Absolutely, and you know that our commitment stands firm. We will continue our participation in NATO ISAF until the end of the mission, and then we will substantially contribute to the new Operation Resolute Support mission. Also, our contingent now is in Central African Republic, though under the European Union mission, which is also very important for us since we have an aspiration to join European Union as well. So, but all these contribution, it also pays back. More than 12,000 Georgian soldiers were trained according to the United States Marine standards by the United States Marines, and this is a pretty big portion of the Georgian army. So which underlines that currently Georgia has one of the most capable and interoperable armed forces with the allied forces, and I'm sure you're aware that starting from 2015 Georgia will be part of the NATO response force also, which will be yet another demonstration of our commitment and the high level of interoperability with the NATO forces.
And considering your drive, I wouldn't be surprised if Georgia would also offer eventually then forces to join the so-called spearhead force within the NRF. But
I think we're capable. I think we're capable of doing so. And I wouldn't hesitate to say yes in a due course, of course. So we now have to focus on Afghanistan particularly to continue our pledge towards Afghanistan government, and also the reforms which has been carried out in the defense system. It's exemplary, and on every annual assessment which comes out from the NATO headquarters, it's a praise and praise that we are progressing. And now even NATO is advising us to think about exporting our reforms to those countries which are now in a process of transitioning. And to this end, we established inside the Ministry of Defense Institution building unit who will be specifically dedicated for sharing best experience and good practices to those nations who are in need when it comes to defense transformation. So we are using also the soft power as well as the boots on the ground to demonstrate that Georgia is a serious contributor to the global peace and security.
So, but coming back to the summit and its main conclusions, you mentioned Georgia's contribution also in Afghanistan. I think we also have a roadmap with Afghanistan clearly outlined with the perspective of the new mission Resolute Support. You mentioned it, to train, advise and assist the Afghan National Security Forces. Clearly progress very much depends on on the new Afghan president or the new Afghan government coalition to sign the the status of forces
Absolutely.
agreements, so that we have a legal clarity on the basis of which we are operating. But we are hopeful that that will happen anytime soon, because also Afghanistan is potentially becoming a very important partnership for NATO.
Absolutely.
Moving from what used to be one of our biggest combat operations into potentially becoming one of our most important partners. It will be up to the Afghan government and its people to decide whether they want to move down that path together with the international community and NATO.
Absolutely, and Afghanistan, when it comes to Afghanistan, I think our joint success was the very smooth elections, of the presidential elections and the local elections which took place in Afghanistan. And now we, of course, are anxiously awaiting the smooth political transition inside the country, which will definitely result in the signing of the PCA as well as NATO SOFA agreement, and the things will move forward towards progress. And in terms of doing bilateral things, 2 months ago, when we had a pleasure to visit our troops in Afghanistan, we signed a memorandum of understanding, bilateral memorandum of understanding with the Afghanistan Defense Ministry, which paves the way for our greater participation in their defense institution building process. And we pledged our commitment to put not only boots on the ground to train not only their militaries, but also to help them to build their defense institution based on the experience what we have and based on the knowledge what we accumulated after such a strong support from NATO allies bilaterally. So we are fully committed to shoulder our Afghani partners when it comes to their defense institutions building, which will definitely be a very important element of establishing peace and stability in the Republic of Afghanistan.
Yeah, clearly, I mean, you mentioned the defense capacity building initiative. Clearly that follows the principle that prevention is better than cure. So what we try to do as an alliance is to combine the significant expertise and skills and know-how the alliance writ large has to actually help countries to be better equipped to actually deal with conflicts before they emerge. So it is preventive action in many ways in order to avoid that things derail and get worse, which is often also the more cost-effective way of dealing with potential conflicts.
Absolutely. Our colleagues are indicating now about the time, and last point, what I wanted to say, I want to thank the Latvian authorities, Lato, for a very gracious hospitality on the excellent organization of the conference, which is becoming one of the central forum of discussing such a pertinent issue, such an issue pertaining to the Euro-Atlantic security. And I'm really pleased to be here. I'm really pleased to have very important discussions with you. And once again, thank you. Thanks for inviting us.
Yeah, indeed. It's a great pleasure to be here. I really enjoyed talking with you. We'll continue doing so during today and tomorrow. It's a great place to be, and an excellent initiative from the Latvian Atlantic Treaty Association. So thanks for having us.
Thank you very much. Good luck with the conference.